You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Well, we don't often talk politics on Weekend Sport. There's a saying that Weekend Sport and politics don't mix, but we do make a rare exception once in a while, and I think with the announcement of the new government, the coalition, yesterday, important to do so, to check in with the new Minister for Sport and Recreation. Grant Robertson held that title under Labour. Now it will be held by Chris Bishop once they're all sworn in, and Chris Bishop joins us on Weekend Sport this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Chris. Thanks for your time.
G'day, good to be here.
Well, was this a role you coveted when looked like you were able to form a government?
Look, it came as a complete surprise, to be honest. I've been, really focused on housing and infrastructure and, some of the parliamentary responsibilities I have. And Chris Luxon said, look, I've been thinking about it and I'd really like you to be the Minister for Sport and Recreation as well. And I said, well, you can't really turn it down, can you? So, no, really, really delighted. But yeah, not something I'd even thought about, to be honest.
What are your priorities for this portfolio once you do get your feet under the desk?
Well, the first priority is get my feet under the desk, and we've got to get sworn in on Monday and then read our briefings to the incoming ministers. And I want to be sitting down with the sport and rec people to talk about what they think I should be doing. I mean, I think the role of government most fundamentally when it comes to sport and recreation is to support New Zealanders' aspirations on the world stage, to make sure our sporting teams and our athletes at the Olympics and Commonwealth Games do the very best they can, but also to foster sport at a grassroots and community level. And that's what New Zealand's known for, and that's what the government's role can be to foster that.
Women's sport was a big focus under Grant Robertson and his role. Do you see that continuing under your stewardship?
Yeah, very much so. I think that's something that the last government, or the outgoing government, really got right, a strong focus on women's sport, and you've seen those increased participation numbers. Obviously, the Women's World Cup, just fantastic. So, yep, that's something I think they did really well at, and I've actually had a text message from Grant Robertson this morning saying, look, anything I can do to help, and any, if you want to have a chat about it. So I will definitely be reaching out to Grant Robertson to just make sure we get a bit of continuity, because, look, it shouldn't be a highly political portfolio. It should just be a continuity portfolio where, governments work together from different sides of the aisle, and I'm keen to keep that going.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a hard one to politicise. I mean, sport and politics, the ever question of whether it mixes, but in terms of that portfolio, it's a hard one to get too politicised, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, Grant, I think did a good job as sports minister, and I want to follow in his footsteps. I think it helps when you do genuinely love sport, and Grant, and I'm the same. So I think that'd be helpful.
Athlete welfare is a sort of big question, isn't it, at the moment? And Sport New Zealand's doing some work around that, and where athletes can go to for help. What's your view on that? And I guess the pressures of what Olympic sports can do, and I guess professional sports as well, around the athlete welfare question.
It's not something I'm an expert on by any stretch. Although I have seen some of the the public things in the last few years affecting some of the sports. So I'm keen to get my head around that and sit down and talk to people working in this area. We'll make decisions in due course. But look, at the elite level, with every sport, it's tough, right? And we need to do what we can to support these guys who are out there representing New Zealand.
2034 Commonwealth Games, NZOC was looking at putting in a bid. Now, we don't have a host for 2026, so 2034 seems a long way off, but there was some cross-party support for investigating it. Where do you sit on that?
Well, I want to get briefed on that and have a look at it. Always worth having a look at these things, always worth investigating. So I want to have get a briefing and get my feet under the desk and get stuck in on that. And that'll be one of the things I'll be looking at in the next few weeks.
Stadiums, obviously wider portfolio than just sport and recreation, but where do you sit on that in terms of the infrastructure around, particularly in Auckland, and the ever-present question around stadiums in New Zealand's biggest city? What's the view on that?
Well, they say that sport and rec's not political, but that is a deeply political question to say. Look, I always wanted to get my head around that. I mean, there's a vexed issue. There's a vexed history around some of these issues. I've also got the infrastructure portfolio as well, so there may be some synergies and some crossovers there to have a look at that. So as I say, I've got a very fixed and open mind. I'm coming into the job with a deep love of sport and a passion for it, and co-captain of the parliamentary cricket team as well. So still play. Lots of issues to get my head around and get my teeth into in due course.
Are you a bat first or bowl first sort of captain when you come to the parliamentary team?
You always bat first, because if you bowl first, sometimes you find you're not chasing much, so you don't get much of a game. So we always bat first.
What are your other favourite sports? I know you're a big cricket fan, viewing your profile on Twitter and seeing you tweet during some of the big games. What other sports are you into, Chris?
I'm actually really into netball as well. I've been a netball fan since I was about 7, actually, growing up watching netball. Trying to get to netball. Sometimes I get invited to the games, and I think I've been to one in the last 3 years. It's just been so busy. But Karen Berger at a function the other night, actually had a really good chat to her about the Silver Ferns and what it was like playing for them. So yeah, it's netball, cricket, obviously rugby, New Zealand's national sport. Watch a bit of the English Premier League on Sky as well. They've got those great little highlight packages. You watch 15 minutes, you get most of the game. So yeah, increasingly into football as well. It's not something I had much of a, I didn't play it growing up or anything. I played cricket and rugby like most boys in New Zealand.
And a couple of final questions, Chris, if I can. Where do you stand on alcohol sponsorship in sport?
National and I, we have traditionally opposed measures to further restrict alcohol sponsorship in sport. And so that's our current position. And I think we've got the balance about right at the moment.
And I suppose big events, that sort of thing, we touched on the 2034 Commonwealth Games. It's not necessarily the role of the government to source big events, but do you see that being on the horizon for New Zealand? We've had the Women's World Cup, football and rugby the last 12 months or so. Do you see that being on the horizon down the track?
Look, I think everyone would want to see big events in New Zealand, but we've got to be realistic about some of the realities of it. We're a small country, we're a long way from everywhere, but we're also a sporting nation. And so you just got to work through these issues, work through the events one by one. I think everyone wants to see more events here, but the government's got constrained fiscal situation as well, and councils have got constrained situations. So we want to see more events here, and it's something I'll be looking at as well.
Chris Bishop joining us on News Talk ZB, the incoming Minister for Sport and Recreation. Thanks very much for your time on Saturday afternoon here on News Talk ZB.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.